Hi everybody, welcome back to the second of 3 videos looking at the Pentax 6x7. And in the first video I showed you the features and the functionality, and in this video we're going to look at how to use the different features and how to actually take this camera and obtain some images with it. At the end of this video I'm going to show you some pictures I've taken with this camera. I don't know exactly how many yet, I'll decide that during post-processing. So stick around for that and you'll get to see the type of image quality that this takes on black and white and slide film. So the first thing, we've got a lens already mounted on this camera. I'm going to take it off by pushing down on the lens release, which is on, if you're facing the camera, it's on the right side. Mosquito, mosquito, mosquito! Ah! If you're looking at the camera, it's on the right side. And you rotate counterclockwise to dismount, or to unmount the camera, or the lens rather. Set that over there. And to mount it, you do the exact opposite. There's a red dot right there, and then there's a red dot on the outer flange up here. Actually, they're kind of orangish, but whatever, that's a colored dot. And then you rotate clockwise a little bit less than a quarter turn. It's a very minimal rotation. And now the lens is mounted. Many of the Pentax 6x7 and 67 lenses had 67mm filter threads, not all of them. The 55mm that I showed you has a 100mm filter thread. Let me tell you, finding any kind of filters for that has been nigh impossible. Anyway, it also came with these camera straps. So I'm going to grab my macro lens real quickly. I'm going to show you what these camera straps look like, and then I'm going to show you how to mount them onto the camera. Okay, so I've gotten my macro lens so you can see really closely what this looks like. This is the connector to the strap lugs. There's 4 strap lugs on the camera like on the LX, and this is the connector that attaches to them. And what you do is we'll put the strap lug through that center hole, and then this pin slides into place to lock, and you might be able to see that the hole's now ovular instead of circular. That pin makes it so that the strap lug can't pull out. And you just take a coin to unmount them, a coin, or in this case my pointing instrument. And push. And then that opens up the opening, and you can take this the lugs. We can take these off of the strap lugs. Yeah. So here is a strap lug close-up. I'm going to put this on. Oh, one thing to note is there are 2 sides to this. There's a side where the rivets face outward, and a side where they're flush. I put the flush side on. I'm not certain if that's a requirement, but I do. So here we go. We've got this put on, pushing it in with my finger, and now that strap is holding the camera. You'll want to use 2 straps, not just one, because you don't want to drop or break this camera. One last thing to note about the strap lug attachment is that there's a little arrow. Okay, there we go, I've got this better light. There's a little arrow there, and that indicates the direction to push the tab to release the strap lug from the strap lug connector from the camera. So once you've got the strap lugs attached, and I took them off so that they would be out of the way, once you've got the straps attached to the strap lugs, you're going to want to load film into this camera. So we're going to open up the back. There we go. And with the camera back open, you'll take a roll of film. This is a roll of 120 paper only on a spool. I previously used this and then took... And when you use paper films like this, it's a good thing to keep some of the papers at least, because if you have folding cameras that take 120, for instance, you can put 35mm paper in these spools where the 120 film was supposed to go, and end up with some neat full image width effects. I would not, for any reason, recommend doing that and running it through the 6x7, because the 35mm film is narrower than the 120, which is this is designed for. And in my slightly paranoid and low risk mind, I could see 35mm film somehow getting jammed in the shutter and ruining it. So strongly recommend only using 120 or 220 film in this camera. So here's a roll of 120 paper. To load the film, now we have these two pins on the bottom. And I'm going to show you real quickly. Got this empty roll here. So let's say we've just finished taking a roll of film. Okay, we take that roll out. Now we've got this empty spool over here. So we would take this out, we'd bring it over to this side, rotate it a little bit until it lines up with the pins here. Now you'll notice on the 120 film there's an opening in the top. There's an identical opening in the bottom. Some have crosshairs, some just have a minus sign. It lines up, the minus sign lines up with a pin up here in the top. So you put it in and rotate it until it's in that pin, which this one still isn't. There it goes. And then we drop this into place, spin it, and lock it. And that makes sure that this stays in place like it's supposed to. Over here the process is similar. Put the new roll in, manipulate it until it catches on the pin, drop this pin into place, rotate the lock, lock it. Now we're going to draw the 120 film lead over the back. Now, right now this is lined up like it's supposed to be. You want to have this opening on top, but if it wasn't, you can rotate this, and within 4 rotations it will bring the spool back to the spool opening back to the top. So I had to tear this paper, unfortunately. It's a little bit trickier to get in. Oops, that didn't take. Oops, didn't want to do that. Okay. So the reason I had to tear this is it has a hole in it, and this spool actually has a clip in there that had gotten into that hole when I did my trial run on this, and I could not get it undone without tearing it. And that's why it's presenting some problems with wrapping now. I'm going to do this slightly differently. Since this is just for demonstration only, this is okay. I wouldn't do this for real. Scotch tape. There we go. That's kind of what it's supposed to look like. Now you can see, as I talked about in the first video, we've got the start here. And the start, for me, has never once lined up exactly with the triangle. And I've never had a problem. I've never lost an image due to that. So what I'll do is I'll advance it until the start comes out. And that's usually here, sometimes as far in as the 2. Because you can see if I advance it all the way, we'll have to keep advancing it. And you could do this, because the film hasn't started yet. But, anyway. Next we close it. And I'm not actually going to close it because I want to show you what's happening in here as the film goes through. So the 120 paperback is advancing. Now because this is an SLR, and here's where the film actually starts, this ripple right here. Because this is an SLR, there's no red window in the back like you might have seen with folding cameras and other cameras that take paperbacks. Advance. Now it's at frame 1. And normally you'd start getting tension as it comes through here. I'm not getting tension because the back isn't closed. But this is what happens. As you take the pictures, it just advances. And it will take 10 pictures per 120 roll of film. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-spool this paper again onto a different spool, and I'm going to show you what this is like with the film back closed so you can see how it responds in the manner that it's supposed to. And we're back. I've got this re-spooled. We're going to close it, and we're going to see how this thing is now supposed to react. Advancing, and the frame counter is working its way up to 0 right now. Now it's at 0. Now getting resistance, and it's at 1. and it's ready to take the first frame. If there were actual film in here, it would be on the first frame. Unlock the camera. You can hear that's got a pretty powerful shutter. Advance. And just do this the whole way through the film. And eventually when we get to the end, which is 10 images, this is quite the workout. My forearm's going to look like Popeye when this video is done. There we go. At the end of the 10 images, now it becomes easier again as it wraps the remaining paper onto the spool. Now, it becomes easier, and then it becomes really easy once all the paper's on the spool. Just like that. It's the fourth. It takes 4 rotations to get all the paper onto the spool after the film roll is finished. I'm going to open the back, flip this down, rotate it, and now I can take the film out. Now in real film, you tuck this end down, and then there's a tab there that you tape over it or glue over it by licking it like an old-timey stamp, and then develop it yourself like I do, or take it off to be developed at a lab like I do with slide film. I should say I only develop black and white at home. Now we're going to take this spool, move it over here, put it in until it lines up with the top pin like that, drop that in place, rotate, lock, close, and that's the process for shooting an entire roll of film, 120 film, with a Pentax 6x7. 220 is a little bit different. I've never shot 220. It's twice as long, and it does not have a paper back for the entire roll. So even if I did have a roll, I couldn't really show you it because I'd have 2 pieces of paper with nothing in between and couldn't really use it. To change the battery, it uses a 6LR44 or 28L battery. Interchangeable. 28L is the common name. If you go to the drugstore, it's a very common medical device battery. So you can usually pick these up for about $8 at the grocery store. I got a whole bunch of generic ones on eBay for $1.99. I got 10. And I figure, you know what, if they only last 1,000 images, I'm still ahead of the game. This one looks like it's not even going to last 1,000 images, quite honestly. I think that one's dead. At any rate, maybe I'm not ahead of the game by buying them direct from the manufacturer. Okay, so flash hot shoe. You might notice there's no hot shoe on this. There's an optional wooden grip that you can put on that has a shoe on it that connects to the PC port, but there's not a hot shoe built into the camera, and that's because it's a professional level camera. Most professional cameras don't have hot shoes built into them. I shouldn't say most, that's probably an inaccurate statement. Many professional level cameras, especially of this era, did not have hot shoes built into them. And that's because most professionals don't shoot with the flash on the camera. Most professionals will shoot with studio setups or other lighting setups where the flashes are in various positions. And so having a hot shoe on the camera would be giving the professionals an accessory that would never get used. Because for most professionals, that's just not part of their workflow. But the flash sync, like we said, is 1/30th of a second. So at the very, very slow 1/30th of a second, you can sync a flash without having any unflashed areas of the picture. The ports on the side are X and FP. X being xenon or electronic. FP being I forget what that stands for yet again, but it doesn't matter because I don't make them anymore. And other special features, like this one, is the MLU. It has the mirror lockup function. When Pentax introduced the 6x7 with the mirror lockup, they did not change the name from the 6x7 to the 6x7 MLU because they were retrofitting 6x7s with mirror lockup, so they didn't designate it differently. It would have been kind of interesting if they had, because then you would know if your 6x7 was an original that had been retrofitted or a later one that had the mirror lockup built into it. I don't know if it would make a difference on the collector's market or not, but it would be interesting to know. They can take 120 or 220 film. Many medium format cameras, any medium format camera with a red window in the back cannot take 120 film. The red window will ruin it because it lets light in. It had the dual bayonet mount, which to the best of my knowledge is a unique feature on the 6x7. I don't know of any other cameras that have a dual mount like that. And it has a familiar build style to 35mm cameras because when they designed this, they wanted it to look like part of the Spotmatic family. And in a lot of ways, it really just does look like a very, very big Spotmatic. The viewfinder, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch over to the macro lens again, and we're going to take a look through the camera's viewfinder and the meter. I'm going to go pick up a fresh battery so you can see the meter in action, and then we'll come back and take a look at some of how that works. Real quickly, one neat thing about this battery is you can put it in the battery holder either way. Whew, that was close. And then the battery holder, you just put the battery in whichever way plus and minus line up, and the battery holder will go in either way. There, now it's lighting up. So that's a good battery. All right, so showing the meter is going to be tricky. You have to hold your eye right up to the eyepiece, and I cannot quite get the eyepiece close enough to show the meter. But what I can show you is that through the meter you get 100% of frame coverage, or through the viewfinder you get 100% frame coverage with nothing in the viewfinder to obstruct your view. And you can change to get different focusing screens. I would actually really like a grid focusing screen for this if somebody wants to buy that for me. And they're only about 120 bucks. Right now I just have the plain Fresnel, but there's various ones. And then the meter is underneath. So as you look through it, you see a meter that looks very much like a standard light meter with the a needle that goes from plus to minus and everywhere in between. One thing to bear in mind about the meter is you only get the meter with the metering prism. There's no meter built into the standard prism, waist level finder, or magnifying prism. So if a meter is a must-have for you, you'll need the metering prism. But that said, like I said in the first video, it's not mandatory to use the metering prism. The meter itself is a through-the-lens averaging meter. So what it does is it takes the light coming in through the lens, and then the cadmium sulfide cells in the prism read that light and average the amount of light over the entire frame as though every image were taken of a gray card, and then it calculates the exposure that way. So if you have bright areas or dark areas within your image that you'd like to capture, you've got to adjust your photo taking style. For instance, you'll probably notice that in these videos, I've been having some problems with my lighting setup for these videos lately, but this one's really tough because I've got a light up here, and this is well illuminated, but this is in shadow. This is very dark. If I could spot meter this and bring out the shadow detail here, but then this would all be blown out. So if I were taking this as a picture and I wanted to catch the shadow detail here, I would have to meter this, recompose, and then take the picture, and that would be how I would take the picture with an averaging meter. So that's it for this video. And I'm going to show you some pictures now that I've taken with this camera, if you stick around for a few minutes. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave those below. I'm pretty good about responding fairly quickly. If this video was helpful, give me a thumbs up. That lets me know I'm on the right track. Also, you can subscribe using that button right down there. And you can find out when I have future videos and things like that. If you have requests for a specific video, let me know. And if I have the technical knowledge and equipment to make that video, I'd be more than happy to. In fact, some of the videos you might have seen on my feed have been the result of viewer requests. And one last thing I'd like to say. Thank you guys for watching. Hey guys, I don't know how I forgot to mention this in the body of the video. It was written into my outline and very important. It's just a big oversight on my part. One big thing is that the battery for this camera operates the shutter and mirror mechanism. So if you leave the camera in mirror lockup mode for an extended period of time, it's going to drain your battery. The battery should last 8 to 10,000 exposures, but if you leave it in mirror lockup mode, as I did once for overnight accidentally, you're going to come back to a battery that doesn't work anymore. So that's one thing to bear in mind when using MLU on these cameras, is that, and you can't avoid it because you need the battery to actually activate the shutter motor. So that's just one consideration when using this camera.